6 simple machines are used to change the direction of a force or the size of a force. The inclined plane, or ramp, is a simple machine that has been used for thousands of years. It was used by the Egyptians over 4,000 years ago to build their huge pyramids. Over 2 million giant blocks of stone, each weighing about 4,500 pounds, were moved up inclines and dragged into place. It's amazing to think that people living over 4,000 years ago were able to build such magnificent structures using basic tools such as the inclined plane. They didn't have the modern equipment we have today to move these huge blocks of stone into place. Today, the inclined plane is still very useful. It is easier to slide this heavy load up the inclined plane than it is to lift the load straight up. Roads will go around a hill or mountain at an incline instead of straight up the hill or mountain. This makes it easier for cars and trucks to get up the steep hills or mountains. It may take longer to wind up the hill or mountain, but it will be less wear and tear on the vehicle. This wooden cart weighs 100 grams, as you can see from the spring scale. When the cart is dragged up the inclined plane, the reading on the spring scale is only about 25 grams, which is much less. The incline makes it easier for the cart to get from one level to another. If a hill is too steep to ride a bicycle straight up, then the best plan is to zigzag back and forth. The biker will go a greater distance, but will use less effort. Often inclines are used to make it easier to get into buildings. Stairs are inclined planes that have steps cut into them to make it easier to climb. Even the roofs on houses are inclines to let snow and rain run off of them. The wedge is another simple machine, and it happens to be closely related to the inclined plane. A wedge is actually 2 inclined planes put together. The wedge is probably the most common simple machine. Knives, axes, and saw teeth are all examples of wedges. A wedge is anything that cuts or splits things apart. The sharp teeth on this table saw will easily cut through wood. The tip of a nail is a wedge because, as it is driven into wood, it pushes the wood apart. But once the nail has been driven into the wood around the nail is still tight. Scissors have been sharpened as wedges along the blade. A jackhammer has a wedge tip that cuts into cement and concrete easily. A shovel is a wedge designed to cut into the ground. This backhoe has wedges on the teeth that are used to cut into ground. A thumbtack has a wedge. It is sharp, so it can poke through things easily. The other end of the tack has a large surface, so you can push it in easily. A screw, like a nail, has a tip that has a wedge for cutting. This allows the screw to be turned into wood or metal with ease. Speaking of a screw, that's another simple machine. A screw is an inclined plane turned around itself. This sheet of paper is shaped like an incline. If we roll the paper around a pencil, it will look like a screw. The threads of the screw are inclined planes. When the screw is turned into wood, the threads pry the wood apart like a wedge. Screws are not smooth like nails. When the screw is turned into the wood, it makes a groove. The groove creates a stronger hold than the flat nail. The first screw was invented over 2,000 years ago by a famous scientist and mathematician called Archimedes. He used it to carry water from a lower place to a higher place. As the screw handle or crank was turned, the screw carried water up. The vise has a screw to squeeze the jaws tight. This carpenter's clamp can hold pieces of wood together while they are gluing. The screw in this wrench is used to move the claws closer together or farther apart, so it can be used to hold or clamp different-sized objects. It usually takes longer to tighten a screw into wood than it does to drive a nail, but the screw generally holds better and for a longer time. So although it takes longer, it's worth the effort, knowing that the parts will hold together better. A nut and bolt are often used to hold things tightly together. The bolt is like a screw, except it doesn't have a sharp wedge-like tip to cut into wood or metal. The bolt and nut fit together and are tightened with wrenches or screwdrivers. A jar lid is able to hold tight because it is screwed on. If you went on a search in your home, you would probably find many examples of screws and nuts and bolts holding things together. Today, we have looked at 3 of the 6 simple machines that are closely tied to one another. An inclined plane helps us to move from one place to another without a lot of effort and wasted energy. Because of the inclined plane, cars can travel up and over hills and mountains without a great loss of energy. The wedge may be the most common of the 6 simple machines. Anything that cuts or has a sharp surface for cutting is a wedge. And of course, the screw is a simple machine that holds such things as furniture tightly together. The hold is strong and will last. These 3 simple machines were grouped together because they are related. The wedge and screw are based on the inclined plane, yet all 3 are different in the jobs they perform. The 6 simple machines, the lever, the wheel and axle, the pulley, the inclined plane, the wedge, and the screw, have been used for thousands of years to make life easier. Today, all tools and machinery have their beginning with those 6 simple machines. And now it's time for the video quiz for today's presentation. There will be 5 multiple-choice questions. Question number 1. Which of these is an example of an inclined plane? A, an axe. B, a can opener. C, a pencil sharpener. D, a ramp. Question number 2. Which of these is an example of a wedge? A, an axe. B, a seesaw. C, a ramp. D, a rake. Question number 3. Which of these uses a screw? A, an axe. B, a seesaw. C, a ramp. D, a vise. Question number 4. Which simple machine is like an inclined plane wound up? A. Screw, B. Wedge, C. Lever, D. Wheel and axle. Question number 5. Which simple machine is like two inclined planes put together? A. Screw, B. Wedge, C. Lever, D. Wheel and axle.